Welcome to Talent Matters, the podcast where talent, skills and grit take centre stage. I'm Donal O'Donoghue and this is episode 27. The podcast is sponsored by Sanderson, talent solutions that transform businesses globally. Today I'm delighted to be joined by actor, producer and filmmaker Sinéad O'Riordan. Sinead, you're very welcome.
Donal, thank you.
Thank you for coming in and thank you for matching the microphone.
Oh, I know, I'm delighted.
Very
Great.
on brand,
Yeah.
very on brand.
It wasn't planned.
We love to start off back at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about life growing up for you. Where are you originally from?
So I'm from Cork, Cork City, from a place called Ballyfihan, and my mum's still living there. So whenever I go back to Cork, it's still home for me. And I grew up. I have two older brothers, and I'm the youngest then in the family. And I suppose Ballyfihan at the time when I was growing up would have been, I suppose, a little rough around the edges. So it was, my family would be working class background. My dad worked for Pepsi Cola. My mum, when we went to school, would have gone out and would have done the food demonstrations. And
I used to love the food
I don't know if
demos
they
back
do
in the
that
day.
anymore.
You get the cocktail
the little
sausages.
if you're starving. Yeah, you
and
go
then
up
you
for
go
10.
up 3 or 4 times, try to look different each time.
Yeah. So she used to do that. That was kind of when I went to school and stuff. So. But yeah, as a young kid, I suppose my brothers weren't too fond of the fact of playing with a younger sister. There'd have been a big gap between us back then. I mean, the gap is less now because I'm older and stuff. So I was very much in my own head, very imaginative, sort of very creative. I was very much a tomboy as well, and I would have been playing games myself in the garden, singing the tunes to the A-Team and going around building things, and MacGyver, humming the tune. MacGyver was my first crush. I must say, I loved him. So I'd be going around humming the tunes, and I'd be like making this and making that. But I was a very active child, very, very active. A lot of energy, but also very shy. And I'd say I drove my mother demented because at the age of 5, she decided to put me into drama and gymnastics. And they were both in the local community centre in Ballyfihan. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it really defined, I suppose, it mapped out where I was going to go in life, and it kind of instilled a lot of values in me from a very young age. I wouldn't have recognised it then, but obviously when you look back on it now, you kind of do. But so I would have gone to drama. I was very shy, so that really, one of my teacher at the time was Jacqueline O'Halloran. I'm still very great friends with her, and I always will give her a big shout out because she was a big reason as to why I'm where I am now with acting and filmmaking. And she really helped me overcome that shyness. And I had a lisp, and she had me doing all these silly tongue exercises and everything. But she was amazing. And I did all the kind of the Fesh Matthews and the mime. I loved mime. Mime was my thing. I just loved the expression of mime, the art form. I loved that kind of funny, the kind of comedy side of mime, actually. I loved kind of, getting a reaction from people. I loved just being able to, that's really what sold the acting for me, really, was when I realised that, God, I'm actually affecting the people that are watching me, But yeah, I did the drama, and then I did gymnastics. I was training 6 days a week in gymnastics. And it was a great thing for me because I suppose Ballyfihan there would have been drugs in the area and things like that. So it kind of kept me off the streets as well. Not that I'd have been allowed out on the streets anyway. So I was training 6 or 7 days a week. And I guess from a very young age, I was very aware of the differences between the haves and the have-nots. And I always kind of viewed myself as being somewhat different. And at the time, I put it down to the fact that, okay, maybe we were a different social class, or maybe it's just because, you know, the people who had money kind of stuck together. And, you know, so I kind of always felt I was different and sort of always on the outside.
Was that in school or in sport more? Where
It was everywhere, actually. Yeah, it was in school and it was in sport. You know, in the gymnastics, my my parents wouldn't have been able to. I actually don't even know how my mum and dad afforded to put me through gymnastics and drama, because the fees were massive. And like, I don't know, my mum always said she robbed St. Peter to pay St. Paul. You know, it was the days where my dad would come back with the wage packet and go there to my mom and give it to my mom, and then she'd take over. So I don't even know how she did it. So I credit a lot to her as well. She's always been my biggest fan. But in gymnastics, you know, it was costly because you have the leotards and the tracksuits and the whole lot. But like, I never could get the new leotards or the new tracksuits, so I always had to stick with the one or the two, you know, or the secondhand ones. And so I was very much aware of that. And I was also aware of the fact that some of the people who would have had money, I suppose, they seemed to be kind of excelling a little bit better than I did. And I was like, I didn't know what was actually going on. Now, I don't attribute this to the lack of money, mind you. I have another place where I'm going with this as well, as to why I felt different at the time. But I just learned quickly that I knew I was swimming upstream, and that I would have to work harder than a lot of people there to kind of get to where I wanted to go. So I sort of learned to put the head down from a very, very young age. I was very determined and very sort of competitive, actually. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. But at the time it was great. But yeah, so I gymnastics was my main thing at the time. I was only doing drama like one day a week. But gymnastics is or was sort of where I learned initially a lot of the, you know, the values of I suppose, grit and determination. And if you want to do better, you work harder, you train harder, you eat better, you do all of this. And that's what I did. And I worked my way up to getting on the national squad. And then I progressed from there into my first international competition. And I was the only gymnast actually in that whole club that actually ever got, well, at the time, got an international. So for me, that was a win for me as well, you know. So I would have been very, very determined as a young girl. In school, I'd have been a good girl in school, but a bit wild. I do still do have that wild side. I was a bit of a messer.
What did you like in terms of the subjects that you enjoyed and kind of?
I was always drawn to the kind of the science subjects and the maths. I loved maths. But then whenever we did drama, that's where I would just light up, you know. That was whenever we'd do school plays or musicals. I was just in my element doing that. I just
It's an interesting mix, isn't it, between kind of
home.
technical, mathematical and creative?
It really is, yeah. I think then, like, what happened with me is when I finished secondary school, when I went to college. So at the time there wasn't any acting courses around in Ireland, really. Maybe possibly in Dublin, but I couldn't afford to go to Dublin. There was London, but I definitely couldn't afford to go to London. So for me, because I liked maths, and you know that there wouldn't have been a whole choice at the time. There was like food science, or there was elec eng, and I chose electronic engineering in CIT, and the reason I did that was because my older brother did it. He did elec eng in UCC, and I was like, sure, I'll give that a go. Really not knowing if that's what I wanted to do at all, you know, but knowing like he eventually moved to California and he was getting a great wage over there. So I knew it was also a way out for me in terms of being able to make money and maybe to kind of get out of that sort of raise the class that I was currently, you know, living in or whatever. And so that's what I did. I did engineering. I hated it. I hated the course, but I put the head down.
You got through it.
I got through it, got an honours degree, and then ended up moved to California, worked in high-tech companies over there for a few years, but always was acting on the side, like acting in college as well. So it was always there.
So even when you were in the States, you kept the hand in with a bit of acting?
I did. And in college, I was in the kind of the drama club there, and I was directing a couple of plays, and I was involved in a few plays, and then...
How did it compare, doing drama in Cork versus being involved in California?
Like drama in California, you mean? Yeah. So I would have just been involved, I suppose, in the amateur drama in California.
I imagine it's very different.
It was very different because I was involved in an Irish drama group, but like, it wasn't the same Irish that you'd have here. It's Americans with Irish roots. So it was like, like top of the morning kind of, whereas I was going in with the authentic Irish accent and the whole lot, but it was great fun. I still, do you know what, it allowed me to it was my artistic outlet, and I studied fashion design over there as well as just a part-time. So I was always kind of creative and dabbling in the creative side of things, but at the same time, hating my job over there, literally looking out the window every day. I used to test software for high tech, and I used to look out the window every day, and I was like, oh my God, I hate this job. I don't know why I'm doing it. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing?
Did you feel at home while you were living there?
I felt at home. I felt very much at home in California. Yeah, I love California. It's like my heart is there for sure. I go back there a lot. I have family there. But I didn't feel at home in the job that I was doing. No. So I loved the area and the sports and everything that I did there, but not with the job. No. Now, if I was doing drama in LA, that might have been a different thing, at the time. And the thing is, that was the thing. LA was only down the road for me because I lived in the Bay Area. I could have jumped on a plane and been auditioning, but my visa wouldn't have allowed me to. My visa was very engineering specific, so it wouldn't have allowed me kind of to do it then anyway. So
how long did you do in the States then?
We were there for 5 years. 5 years. So my dad ended up, he passed away before we were getting married, and my dad passed away 3 months before we got married, and I kind of knew I'd have to come home to my mum as well, and my husband wanted to do an MBA, but it was a lot cheaper to do an MBA in Ireland than it was over there.
Definitely.
So he practically dragged me kicking and screaming onto the plane. I did not want to leave. It's still a chip on my shoulder. Comes out every now and then when I'm drunk. Like, you dragged me back from California. But no, we came back and he did his MBA, and I was supporting him. I was still working in high tech, and then I had 2 boys, and it was after I had the 2 boys. I was also doing a diploma in fashion design, so I kept that up as well. I didn't really delve into the acting straight away. When I came back, I kind of did more of the fashion design stuff. But after a while, after I had the 2 boys, I was like, okay, I'm done now, because I was staying at home with them anyway because it was just cheaper, and I was like, it's time now to do what I really, really, really want to do, and that was acting, and I just had to figure it all out because I came into it at a late age, So
it's an interesting time as well, isn't it? After having the kids and trying to reconnect with yourself and who you were before kids and your identity.
It really is. It really is. It was a tough time. Now I must say, it was like there was a period of time that were very challenging and tough, and that was the time from my dad died to when I eventually decided to go into acting, and that was a span of like 5 years. Now I look back on it and I realize I had postnatal depression as well, which I didn't realize I had at the time, but it is a hard time, and it was only when I decided to do and follow like that true. I'm looking at that on the wall. It says, find your voice. It was when I actually found my voice and realized that this is what I really wanted to do. That's when there was so much relief, and just, I just knew the time was then, and that I was in a position that I could do it then. So, but it wasn't
like
easy.
Like a bit of a reboot, isn't it? And just
it was a total reboot. It was a reboot.
So what did you do? obviously identified I need to get back to what makes me happy and
Yeah.
what my purpose is.
Yeah.
So take us from there.
So basically, I was a bit of a course whore. So I jumped on absolutely every acting course, acting for film, just all the different voice courses, and I just jumped on everything that was available at the time. I did part-time courses with the Gaiety. I was doing this, that, and the other, and then I got involved in a play, and I got cast in a play as a lead in a play called Aliana. It was a two-hander. And off the back of that, then I knew that I was going to have to sort of create my own work as well, because I knew it wasn't going to be easy, because I was coming to it late and I didn't have an acting qualification per se. Even though I did all the Lambda qualifications when I was younger and all of that, but I didn't have that training that's available to people nowadays. So I just had to learn the ropes really quickly, and I was due to go in and do another play, and I had, I suppose, an artistic difference or falling out with the director, and that's what got me into producing, because it was going to be produced under that company. And I had already bought the rights to the play, and it was called The Wool Gatherer, and it was a two-hander again, and I realised that I would have to produce it myself, and I literally just threw myself in at the deep end. So I had to produce, but then I also had one of the main roles in it as well. But it was probably one of the most fulfilling jobs that I've done, and that play in itself, I would think about it every day. I loved it. It was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So that's what got me into producing, was I was kind of literally had to throw myself in at the deep end and learn. I didn't know what a producer did.
Yeah, so what does a producer do? Like when you think about going back to that, how do you balance the two roles, and what are the key things that a producer has to do, and how do you balance that with a lead acting role?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I'm more in film now, so there was a natural progression for me from theatre to film, but I suppose the producer really is just responsible for just getting the whole thing together, you know, and getting the money and getting the team and getting the right team and that right balance, booking the spaces, the locations, the everything. I suppose it's a little bit different, theatre versus film, you know. There's probably more moving parts when it comes to film and stuff. But yeah, basically, but like even when I started learning about film production, I had to Google terms. I didn't know what gaffer was. I was like, what the hell is a gaffer? It's a stupid name for it. It's like, you know, lighting technician, and they're the people who give you the most beautiful lighting in the background, you know, and you need them. And I was like, what's a gaffer? But yeah, I had to just learn all these terms and just learn, find like learn the ropes really quickly, you know, and I think that's sometimes what you really have to do. You just have to jump in at the deep end, because like, what else are you going to do? If you know what I mean? There's no point in waiting for the phone to call. I was never that type of person. I did get an agent, but like the phone doesn't ring every day. So you do have to produce, and you have to wear all these hats, you know, and you have to learn how to wear these different hats. I think even for students graduating nowadays, it's just you need to know the different disciplines, you know, and know how to write or know how to direct or have a few different disciplines that you can sort of delve into, you know. I think it's really important. So, but sorry, I digress there. When you're producing then and acting, so recently I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that goes back to my former childhood years, where I kind of thought I was different as well, but I was putting it down to the fact of, oh, we don't have as much money as them and the whole lot. But it's just because my brain worked a bit differently than other people. So when it comes to producing then and acting, it's favorable for me, because producing, there's so much needs to be done, and it's like this, that, like there's like lists and lists of stuff. So my head works good that way, because it's like always thinking about the next thing that needs to be done, the next thing. And then you've got this ability then as well to sort of hyper focus in on what you really need to focus in on. So you know, you're producing 1 minute and next thing it's like, okay, it's your scene, so you're in the scene and you just have to switch over straight away. And it was challenging at the start, but it kind of came to me quite naturally, actually. I think I was just able to just switch over and take off the producer cap, put on the actor cap, and then just really focus in on the role and on the other person opposite me, and just not let outside stuff, you know.
And what led you to get tested for ADHD?
Do you know what? It was a conversation with a friend of mine. The two of us would have been messers, the class messers back in school, and I was chatting to her, and she was like, "Do you know what? I was recently diagnosed with ADHD," and I was like, "Were you?" I was like, "What's ADHD?" I didn't really know anything about it, and I started looking it up, and I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, "Oh, I think I have that as well." And then I just went to my doctor just one day. I said, "Look, I'm just curious." And yeah, I got diagnosed with it, and it just helped me understand things and put things into perspective, you know, as to why I may have had challenges with certain things, or why other things may have come easily enough to me then. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was great. Like, I mean, when I was initially diagnosed, I had this sort of maybe a 2-day grieving period, in the sense I was like, oh my God, it was like someone pulling back curtains on my life, kind of going, you know, actually I thought my life was one thing, but actually it wasn't, because I had ADHD and I didn't know it, but now I've like completely seen the positives to all of that, you know. So I think a lot of people, the artistic
definitely
people,
and a lot of entrepreneurs and founders,
Totally,
because like you said, there's that hyper focus part as well.
there is.
What are the downsides, or are there downsides?
Oh God, for me, I don't think there's downsides. It's hard for me to say if there's a downside, because it's all I've ever been used to. Do you know what I mean?
Well, like, what about switching off and stuff like that? Are you good at
switching
unwinding
off?
and chilling out?
Oh, sorry.
And stuff?
No, I'm not good at that.
Oh.
No. So that's a downside, yeah. There you go. No, even when I go on holidays, it takes me a good few days to kind of, my mind is always kind of going, or I'd bring my laptop, or I'd always have a bit of work planned. When I was in pre-production on Swingbout, it's a feature film we did, and it's going to be releasing soon, I'd go to bed and my mind would just be absolutely wired, and I'd wake up the next morning completely exhausted because it just went into overdrive. Now, I didn't know I had ADHD then. Had I known, maybe I could have used some tools, you know, some meditation and things like that, or some breathing stuff to help me with that. But yeah, so definitely it's the overthinking and the over processing part of the brain that it finds it hard to kind of
I
sleep.
can so relate to that.
Yeah, or you know, if you even come away from an interview and you're heightened, you know, and you're like, boo, you're like on a high, and then sometimes then you'll just crash then as well, you know, and it's exhaustion. But yeah, you kind of keep going. You're like a Duracell bunny. You keep going, and then suddenly you'll burn out a bit. And so I'm learning how to balance all of that at the moment. Next is a tricky one.
Talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned Swingbout and founding your company. So maybe tell us a little bit about starting your company, and then some of the projects including that.
Okay, so when I started producing, I had to have a production company, and I founded a company called Orion Productions, and it's sort of based on my surname and my son Rian, and you know, it's the constellation as well. It's in the shape of a hunter, so in my head it was like, I'm very driven, I go after what I want. So it was, I try not to murder people in the meantime, obviously, but it was
Always
more
good.
yeah, oh, that's good. But it's like just always having that goal and going after what I wanted, and that's where kind of the Orion thing came from. And I, during the early days of it, I auditioned for a guy called Morris O'Carroll, and he's one of my best friends and long-term collaborator now, and he was doing his first short film at the time. And I auditioned for it, and I got the role, and I came on set and I met him, and he met me, and we were kind of looking at each other going, have we met before, or like, or whatever. It was just an instant sort of connection that we had. And we were just two, like, artistic souls that were meant to work together, and we've done short films together, and we did a feature film 7 years ago, and then Swingbout was his idea. It was born out of COVID, and he's a big boxing fan. So, and I can explain what Swingbout means, but he's a big boxing fan, and he had the idea over COVID. He pitched it to me in a graveyard, actually, because we were out shooting another short film, and we always just laugh at the fact that it was pitched in a graveyard, and I just loved the idea, and he had a great role for me as well, which was another thing that really appealed to me, because it would have been my first time really in a kind of a supporting lead role, but also the whole production of it was, I knew it would be challenging, and I do love a challenge as well, so I just loved the idea of it. So yeah, we went into pre-production on it, and we premiered it at DIF this year. DIF is the Dublin International Film Festival. We're going to have a cinema release there now on September 20th in Cork, Galway, Limerick, Dublin, Mayo, somewhere else. So.
And where can people find out about that? Is there a website for it?
There will be, yeah. So I will have a link to all the ticket sales on Orion Productions .ie, but we also have a Swingbout Film Instagram page, and then I post a lot of stuff from my Instagram then as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So we'll add all of the Swingbout info and your socials to the show notes, so anyone that's listening or watching will be able to find it there.
That would be brilliant.
So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges in the film industry when you're setting up an independent company
I suppose funding is always the biggest challenge. It's hard to come by, and it's definitely an obstacle for a lot of people, but for me, I'm very lucky in the sense that myself and Morris would be very, resourceful. So you just pull in, when you don't have the funds in place, you just pull in favours left, right and centre. When we shot Swingbout, we shot it down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for a month, and I had to figure out how to house 25 cast and crew, how to feed them and pay rental to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and so there's all these things that you have to think about. Even if you did have money, sorry, just touched the mic. Even if you did have money, it's a challenge anyway, because you have to budget accordingly. So that's one. It's a big challenge. But from the company, the running of the company then itself, I was explaining to you earlier, I'm more of a creative producer. I'm great at getting things up off the ground. I kind of think through pictures and visions and colours and things like that, but the business side of it I could do with getting somebody in to help me with the business side of it, because I hate doing all of the funding applications. I don't think anybody likes doing them, to be honest with you. They're so much work, and then sometimes you'll get funding and sometimes you won't. So we've yet to kind of get a lump sum of funding. I have worked on funded films as a producer, all right, but Orion Productions has yet to sort of get a chunk of money in. So basically Swingbout would have been self-funded, and kind of people, friends, family throwing money in here, there and everywhere. So we just begged, borrowed and stole. So yeah, so definitely the funding aspect is a massive part of it. Yeah.
Must be so satisfying though to feel it coming to fruition now and cinema release.
It's great, yeah, and not just for me but for everyone. I'm such a mother hen when it comes to the film family, and we had some amazing. They were all incredible. The cast and the crew. They when we were casting and crewing back in the day. We told them, we said, look, please be under no illusions. We don't have a lot of money for this. We have enough money to give us as high production value. That was our goal, was to, and it's always our goal, is to raise the production values and that bar every time. But we just said to them, look, please don't have, we don't have that much money, but what we do have is we have a vision, and we will push this film as much as we can, and we want to make a breakout film with breakout artists, and we will do our hardest. And Morris is great in his area and I'm great in my area, and that's why we work very well together. So we're delighted. I'm so happy for the cast and crew. A lot of them worked on deferred payments, so basically they weren't paid at the time, so they'll if the film were to make money down the line, then they get paid off the back end. But again, you have to be realistic about that as well, and be upfront and say, look, it could make money, it'll be in the contracts if it makes money, you know, but it may not, and a lot of them don't. So yeah, we'll see. But look, we're delighted. Yeah, we're so thrilled that it's coming to the cinemas now. So yeah.
And the production looks great. I've only seen the trailers that you've shared, but
yeah,
it
it's
looks
great.
fantastic.
And it went down great at TIFF. Like, we got a standing ovation. It was like a rock concert in there because the music and the score, we have an original score as well. So everything was just fabulous seeing it up there for the first time. I was just so happy. I'm so proud of everyone, to know. Yeah.
I guess the question then is, what's your vision for the future? Where do you want it to go? Where do you want to see the company go to? Or if you had the magic wand to kind of paint what the next 5 or 10 years look like, what are your goals?
So I suppose in this year for me, it's been a very, there's been a lot unveiled, I suppose, for me in terms of my priorities and what I want to do. I would like to get someone else in to help me with the company so that I can focus more on the artistic side of things, and on my acting. I've been working more on that craft, because when you're producing as well, you kind of spread yourself really thin, and sometimes it's hard to kind of bring yourself back to the core, and you have to ask yourself as well, why am I producing and why am I doing all this work? And I'm producing my own work, yeah, but sometimes, you know, you just have to kind of rein yourself back in, and that's what I've been doing lately. I've been just sort of, you know, people have been coming to me with projects, I've been turning them down, and I'm just sort of reflecting and sort of recharging and just trying to realign what I want. And what I want is to focus a lot on the acting now. And I've been getting more auditions, and I've gotten very, very close to something recently, and it was gut-wrenching. I got down to the last 2 for a series regular, and it killed me that I didn't get it. But again, it goes back to, you wallow for a day or two, you feel sorry for yourself, and then you just dust yourself off and you get back up again. And that's a skill that and it's down to grit as well, right? And resilience and stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus more on my acting now, going forward, because I've already been focusing on it more for the last 6 months. And actually, my character in Swingbout, I worked with an acting coach for her. Her character is Emma, and she's all right. Oh my God, people would probably hate her. But I worked with him because I needed to give myself that space as a producer to, or as an actor. I needed to, because I was producing all of the time, and I needed to take off the producer hat and work on the acting. And I just made sure I allowed a certain numbers of hours a week with an acting coach to help me embody this character and to see who she was. And like, it's probably my best acting to date. I feel it is anyway. And I work with him a lot then with my auditions as well. So definitely that's all helping me. And I think that's what I want to focus on for me, while also maintaining the company. But I think at this point, I just need to get other people in to help me with it, because otherwise you're just going to spread yourself too thin, and, you know, you're not going to really be able to do what you love, which is the acting for me, you know. And I love producing. I do love producing. But yeah, I think 1 or 2 more bodies would be nice, you know.
What's the state of, I suppose, the independent film scene at the moment in Ireland or internationally?
Yeah.
And what do you think it needs to continue to develop and thrive?
You see, independent can mean a lot of different things. You can have independent with millions of dollars being thrown at it, or you can have real core indie where you have, like, I don't know, 50,000 or not even that, where people are doing it for free or whatever. I think what's needed, and actually it's already happening, Screen Ireland have announced this new program called Perspectives, and it's for emerging filmmakers and talent, and it's to help them with low budget independent filmmaking, and to help them find their voice and how to get it from, script or from their heads to script and onto the camera. So I think what they're doing is a great thing right now, because more of that's needed for sure. There's I love the indie scene. It's people that are extremely like-minded, and they're just they're nearly punk filmmakers, I suppose. And yeah, I think just to have more, I suppose, recognition from the funding bodies, and that's already happening, which is great. So we chose not to go for funding with Swingbout because it was kind of coming off the back of COVID, and we were just gung-ho to kind of get it made. And the issue with funding is you have to go into development and then production, and it can take a long time. And I understand why it needs that, but for this particular project, we wanted to show what we could do on limited funds and sort of use it as a calling card to maybe get funding for the next one.
That's what I was thinking. Is that kind of how it works when you can demonstrate what you can deliver on a small budget?
I think so, yeah. And a lot of it will come down to box office sales then as well. So that's the next big thing. Because once you have the film, your journey's really, once the film's in the can, your journey's really only starting then, because then you have to look at the sales and the distribution and the getting it out there and and that will help you box office and, sales and everything. That will help you as well, maybe secure funding down the line as well, but yeah, we'll see. Who knows? We'll keep going. We'll plow on,
I have to ask you, because you worked in the tech sector, what do you see as the impacts of kind of technology in film now? Are you seeing much of an impact or much of a difference?
Yeah, I suppose it's more the AI stuff, really, isn't it? It's an interesting space. I as an artist, you'd be worried. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are worried with the whole AI thing, and I've heard someone say, "Look, you just have to embrace it," and you do, and it's great. I love it, and it helps me with funding packages and everything. But and it's great in terms of posters and graphic design and all that kind of stuff. But then what happens to the people who are actually employed to do that? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. I think definitely technology's come on leaps and bounds with cameras and podcasts. Although podcasts have been around for years, haven't they? Really, yeah. But yeah, and I think, I suppose, all the social media stuff, that's nearly the new way of filming in a way, isn't it? That whole content creation that people are doing at the moment.
That's the nice thing. It almost democratizes it. I'm saying that right? Because it gives you a chance to go direct to consumer or direct to your audience if you've got something to talk about.
It really does. And that would be a great thing for even actors or filmmakers that are coming fresh out of college. It's geez, definitely dive into that whole social stuff. If you've got a voice or a story or something that you want to tell, you can do it very easily over TikTok, or get your subscribers up straight away. So it's just an audience that's out there waiting for you.
And it's incredible the skills that people are coming out of creative colleges with now in terms of editing and creating content. And
absolutely. But sure, they're nearly born with a mobile phone in their hands at this stage, so they've had that techie background as well. I think as I can see it with my kids come to me to help me with stuff, and I have a degree in engineering, but I'd be like, how do you do this? And they're like, oh yeah. And sure, they're so tech savvy nowadays. It's mad. It's
brilliant.
Great.
Well, look, what I have to say to you is thank you so much for coming in and doing this.
For having me.
I'm really looking forward to the release, or the cinema release, of Swingbout, and we're going to share it on our show notes and on our socials as well. For anybody that wants to follow your work, where can they follow you?
So I'm on Instagram, so just Sinéad O'Riordan on Instagram, and Swingbout Film is there. My company's up there as well, so it's all linked together. And Sinéad O'Riordan on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, kind of everywhere really.
Very good.
Yeah,
that's where you have
TikTok.
to be. Bit of TikTok as well.
TikTok, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming in and doing this.
Thank you so much.
And if you've enjoyed the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube. You can follow our Instagram. They're @talentmatters_podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor, Sanderson. And thanks again, Sinead.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.